Thanks for
Eduardo.
attending. Okay, ready, steady, go.
Yep.
Thanks for attending today's Oracle Virtual Developer Meetups. With me are Lucas Cellema and Rolando. Over to you, presenters.
Thanks, Jürgen, for that introduction, and thanks for setting it all up for us. Today we embark on a small adventure. It's an adventure of 6 virtual developer meetups on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, and more specifically on the cloud native application development done on the Oracle Cloud Platform. And very importantly, part of this series is a lot of hands-on, but we'll get to that in a moment. So Oracle Cloud, we're going to tell you about Oracle Cloud. You will see it in action. And as I said, most importantly, you will be doing it yourself. You will be doing Oracle Cloud. So basically, these 6 episodes in our series will be touring the Oracle Cloud services. And we've picked a number of services that are especially relevant when you're doing cloud native application development. We will do an introduction of the services. We will demonstrate the services. And then we provide you with guided hands-on labs based on the Katacoda platform, more on that platform in a moment, that will allow you to do the Oracle Cloud services, to use them, to work with them step by step, without actually needing to know all that much about them at this point. But of course, you will learn about them, and after you've done the labs, you should be able to continue on your own. We will also be available for Q&A. Already, you can use the Q&A section of this Zoom session to ask your questions, and we will be at least trying to answer those questions. Just so you know, all the sessions are recorded and they will be available for replay later on. So a little bit about this Katacoda platform that was recently acquired by O'Reilly. It's an online course environment platform, and it provides you with scenarios for trying out many different technical environments. It provides us with the ability to provide these scenarios to you. So all the scenarios are Katacoda scenarios. All the scenarios come with a runtime environment, Ubuntu Linux, and a scenario consists of step-by-step instructions here shown on the left. And in these instructions are code snippets, and you can execute those code snippets on the right side in the terminal on the Ubuntu environment just by clicking on the code snippet. You'll also get an overview in the file explorer of all the resources that we've made available. And there is a text editor that you can use to look at text and also to edit text. In this environment, we will automatically install for you the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure command line interface, the FN command line interface for the function scenarios, and a number of other runtimes. Those are all prepared for you automatically. So there's a few things that you should know about these Katacoda environments. They're free, and they live for 60 minutes. That's because we're using the free version. After 60 minutes, they're killed. They are ephemeral, and after 60 minutes, they're gone and lost forever. So if you're in the middle of a scenario and go and have yourself a cup of coffee, you may be in for a disappointment when you get back. You can run a scenario multiple times. You can just start it over and over again, and they're available to the general public. So you could share the links to the scenarios, not just to our scenarios for OCI, but to any scenario with your friends and your families. The scenarios that we have created and all the sources that we're using in our scenarios are available on GitHub. That's where Katacoda is reading them from. And that's where you could also be looking at them or even helping us with improving them. So feel free to send us some pull requests. So the real Katacoda scenarios for Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, they're on the link that you can see at the bottom. And if you go to that link in your browser, you will get an overview that looks like this. Each blue rectangle represents a scenario. And in the course of these six webinars, we will go through all these scenarios. I will show you one in just a moment. So first of all, cloud native. What do we mean? What does the world mean with cloud native? Applications that are completely born in the cloud, that were created using the facilities made available by a cloud vendor, managed services, PaaS services, anything goes that's in the cloud. It's not taking on-premise software and bringing it to the cloud or building an application in the same way you would build it for on-premise deployment and run it in the cloud. A cloud-native application does not have explicit infrastructure. It's serverless. It makes use of automatically provisioned platform components. Cloud-native applications can easily be scaled up. They can quickly be ramped up. They can quickly be deployed and provisioned. Typically, you will pay for using those cloud-native applications per use. And there's a lot of automation involved, automation in the application and automation in the infrastructure that we use for running the application, for provisioning that infrastructure, for monitoring it, and for further improving it. So the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Platform comes with many different services, probably 20, 25, 30 different services. Not all of them are as meaningful for cloud-native application development. Not all of them are discussed in our series. The services that we have selected are the following. We will be looking at functions, serverless functions. That will be a topic of our next webinar, so not for today. And these functions are at the heart of any cloud-native application. These functions can be exposed to consumers, any consumer anywhere in the world, through the API gateway. That too will be discussed in the next webinar in a week's time. Today we'll talk briefly about one of the basic services, the object storage service that you will be using in many scenarios. And in 2 weeks' time, we will also be talking about the NoSQL database service. We'll talk about streams, think events, think Kafka, and you know more or less what streams is all about. And streams can be published to by functions, and an event on a stream also can trigger a function, and we will be discussing that as well. Then, in the last of our 6 webinars, we will be looking at digital assistant, and we will create a digital assistant that will make use of the APIs that are running as a cloud-native application on the OCI platform. We'll also be looking at other ways of deploying applications, ways that may be a little bit less cloud native, but are still quite relevant. Today, Rolando will take us through the compute service. And in the 5th, I believe, webinar, we will be looking at managed Kubernetes and running applications in containers. Today and across all the seminars, we will be looking at various facilities in the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. We will be looking at compartments, for example, because we can't do anything outside a compartment. And today we will also specifically look at events. More about that in a little while. We will also be talking about a number of general facilities that helps us with our ops, our cloud ops, operations of our cloud environment, cloud native operations, if you like. And here I'm adding a number of technologies that we will be discussing. So this series of webinars is brought to you by the Red Expert Alliance. Rolando and myself are both representatives of the Red Expert Alliance, and we are a network powered by real experts, real Oracle, real Red experts from 3 continents and 9 different boutique consulting firms. We share our knowledge internally within each other, amongst each other, and now we are also sharing our scenarios and our experiences with Oracle Cloud with the rest of you. So this series has been made possible by Jürgen Kress from Oracle, and 3 presenters from Real are Rolando, Ruben, and myself. And we are also representatives of the Oracle ACE and Oracle Groundbreaker Ambassador programs. So 6 Super Wednesdays starting today. You're here, so you know it starts at this time, and for me that's 5 p.m. because I'm in Western Europe. I'm not even sure what time it is for Rolando, but I'm sure it's much earlier.
10 a.m. Yeah.
10 a.m. Okay. Good morning.
Absolutely.
As I said, all the sessions are recorded, so even if you're not in our time zone, you would still be able to follow them. Here's the agenda for not just our sessions, but also some of the other Oracle developer virtual meetups that Jürgen is facilitating. You can see the agenda, and for today we're focusing, of course, on the first one. There we go. So we will be giving you a brief introduction of the Oracle Cloud Platform. I already gave you a brief overview of the Red Expert Alliance, and then we'll focus on a number of the hands-on scenarios. First, the scenario that you need to go through in order to prepare your cloud tenancy for all the other scenarios. That's not the nicest one, but it's one that you have to go through to set it up, and then you can start for real. So briefly on Oracle. Oracle Corporation currently has two major pillars. They're both in the cloud, of course. One is cloud applications, the world of SaaS, and we're not going to discuss SaaS at all. And then there's the cloud infrastructure, or the Generation 2 cloud, which succeeds the cloud that we now call Oracle Cloud Classic. We will be focusing on Oracle Cloud Generation 2 or Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Generation 1, Classic Cloud, wasn't really all that cloud native. It's basically a lot of on-premises software that was running in Oracle's data centers with some degree of management performed by Oracle for us. Generation 2 is a completely different story. It's almost entirely designed from the ground up for the cloud. So it's a cloud native cloud, if you like. And many lessons learned were applied, not just from Oracle's Classic Cloud, but also from other cloud providers like AWS and Azure, because many of the people that used to work for those providers took the opportunity to redesign a cloud from the ground up at Oracle. Oracle made a number of very focused acquisitions to complete its cloud portfolio. You see some of the names on the slide. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or Generation 2 Cloud. Some of the main themes of this cloud for Oracle are competitive pricing, being able to offer services cheaper than Amazon. That seems to be almost the main objective of Larry Ellison. And it's interesting, of course, because Oracle didn't used to be in the game of competitive pricing. It used to sell on other characteristics. Secure by design is a very important thing, as is openness. Openness in the technology that's used, in the ways that that technology can be used, and even openness in the way how different cloud services from different providers can be combined. For example, the collaboration between Oracle and Azure. Of course, Oracle focuses on enterprise technology and enterprises in general. So everything Oracle is offering is suitable for use in the enterprise, and sometimes is targeted specifically at the enterprise. You can get a trial for trying out Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, and we'll talk a little bit more about the trial in a moment. The trial ends after 30 days, but there's also the always free tier, which gives you unlimited, in time at least, unlimited access to various services, including Autonomous Database and Autonomous Data Warehouse. And also 2 compute VMs, a generous amount of block, object, and archive storage, a load balancer, and quite a bit of data egress. So even after 30 days, when your trial ends, you will still have this free tier on which you can run not just 1, but 2 database instances, Oracle database instances. So here's a quick overview of the various categories of services within Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, but there are many pictures that have different lists of categories. It's just to give you the impression that Oracle Cloud is covering a fairly wide area, and it is. It's also covering a wide area geographically speaking. Here you see an overview of all the locations in the world where Oracle is setting up data centers or already has set up the data centers. By the end of this calendar year, so by December, there should be 36 Oracle regions running, 36 locations where there are data centers. A little bit more about the physical organization of the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So it starts at the region level. and then you zoom in to availability domains, data centers, and fault domains. So within a region, there's one or more availability domains, and an availability domain lives in one or more data centers. Two availability domains are isolated from each other, so they are very, very unlikely to fail together. So if you are looking for high availability of your applications, make sure that resources are replicated across two availability domains, and you're reasonably safe from disaster. Of course, you can also go cross-region. The network backbone between availability domains has a very high capacity, and it's almost as if resources in different availability domains are very close together. So within a data center, there are fault domains, and these fault domains are actually blocks of resources down to the physical resources that are isolated from one another. So you can specify that multiple instances in a cluster should run on different fault domains, and chances of these fault domains failing at the same time are very small. And each fault domain has its own mutually exclusive patch and maintenance schedule. Each availability domain has 3 of these fault domains, exactly 3. That's not something that you can define yourself. So in addition to this physical organization, there's also the logical organization. Your tenancy is your entire cloud environment, and your tenancy also is what we call the root compartment. Inside this root compartment, there can be other compartments, and all resources in OCI, all VMs, all functions, they all live inside a compartment. And compartments are logical units, and we use them for organizing, for naming, for managing, and for authorization. So compartments will be in all tenancies, and you will probably have many of them. For the lab today, we will be creating a single compartment for all the lab resources. Compartments can be nested, as I probably already explained. And a compartment is a logical thing. It spans across physical units. So it goes across availability domains, across data centers, across regions. So there are many tools that we can use to interact with the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure environment, with your cloud tenancy. There's the browser. So the browser-based GUI, the console, that's easiest to use, but not easy to automate. It's something that you will probably frequently use, but you will also be using other tools, such as the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure command line interface, and that's a tool we will be using throughout the labs. Then there are many software development kits in different languages that you can use to program against the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So you can manage cloud resources programmatically, just as you can through the command line interface. And you can do the same thing through the REST APIs. And both the software development kits and the command line interface under the hood make use of the REST APIs. And then there are various tools and plugins that you could also be using. Some of these will be discussed in our webinar series, but not all of them. One tool I haven't mentioned yet, that's the Cloud Shell. It's a fairly recent addition to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. It was added back in February and March. It's a VM that you can start inside the Cloud Console, and it allows you to use all the programmatic tools that you see listed on the slide in the context of your cloud tenancy. So you don't need to log in, you don't need to provide a public key for interacting with your cloud environment. The Cloud Shell is pre-configured and is actually very easy to use. To give you a very, very brief example, of course, it has stopped connecting. This is my Cloud Console, and in my Cloud Console, in my Cloud Console, yeah, that's the right term. I've opened the Cloud Shell with this icon over here. It opened this terminal, and here I can do many things, including starting VI. But one thing I will be doing quite often is using the OCI command line interface. And it's always started with OCI, and it's followed then by an additional command. And you will be using these commands on many occasions in the labs. I should not let myself get lost in the Cloud Shell. Sorry about that. So one of the basic services in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, it's like the S3 of Oracle Cloud, is the object storage service. And the text you see here is text taken from Oracle's marketing information. Basically, object storage is where any of your services or yourself can store files of any type. And there's also the archive storage for data that you don't need all that often for your cold data, and it's cheaper to store data in archive storage, but it's not very expensive to store data in object storage either. A couple of things that we should mention about object storage. It's a regional service, so this is not specifically tied to a location or even an availability domain. The object storage is organized in namespaces and buckets. The buckets are very similar to folders. They can be nested just like folders. And of course, inside the buckets are the objects, and the objects are typically the files. Now, there was an abbreviation I hadn't really looked into before, a TB. And a TB is very similar to a terabyte, but it's just a little bit more than a terabyte because it's the, well, never mind about that. Look it up on Wikipedia. Object storage has a number of features, such as durability. Multiple copies are automatically created. You don't need a SAN if you have object storage. Encryption of all your data in rest. Your Oracle object storage can look like S3 because that's more or less the standard. It can also look like it's an Hadoop distributed file system. So it can easily be used with Spark and Hadoop. It allows you to create pre-authorized requests, basically URLs that will always link, no, not always because they are time limited, that will link to an object on object storage. And you can implement lifecycle management. Now, the first scenario that you will be doing after you've done the preparation of your environment, we'll look at the object storage service, as well as many other aspects and concepts in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So that's this second scenario on this page. And all the scenarios look similar. There's an overview page. Typically, when you open the page, the overview gives you information about what's in the scenario. And here is the screen layout I showed you before. You can step through all the pages of the scenario. You can click on files to open them. This is meaningless, obviously. As soon as you've made a change, it's saved to the file system. So you don't need to save. In fact, there is no way to save the file. It's saved automatically. And over here, you can use the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure command line interface, just like we could in Cloud Shell. There is one big difference. In Cloud Shell, it's pre-configured for your cloud tenancy. In the Catacoda scenarios, you need to first provide the contents for both this PEM file, that is where the public key goes, sorry, that's where the private key goes, and this config file. It is described in all the scenarios, so you should be aware of it, but just know that this is something you need to configure in order to get the command line interface to work in your environment. So briefly about this preparation for all the scenarios. What do you need to set up before you can start doing the scenarios? Well, you need access to an Oracle Cloud Infrastructure tenancy. And you may already have access, that's fine. You can also get your own cloud trial through the Oracle site using your credit card. It doesn't cost you any money, but you still need a credit card for authentication purposes. That's also a way of doing it. And there's the environment that you can get as a participant in this seminar. I will tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. So once you have your cloud tenancy, you should go to the Katacoda scenarios. That's the web page that I just showed you. And then you need to run the first scenario that will take you through the steps of preparing your cloud tenancy for our other scenarios. Basically, you will provision an OCI compartment and some other resources, and you will prepare an authorization token and a key pair. I will show you a little bit more about that scenario in a moment. In order to get access to your own cloud tenancy, if you do not already have access. If you go to the link shown on this slide, you can sign up for a cloud trial. And you can sign up using, if you sign up using the same email address as you used for registration for this webinar series, then you should be whitelisted to get a cloud trial without having to provide credit card details. You also get $500 worth of credits instead of the normal 300. However, we made a small mistake. This whitelisting kicks in on the 11th of June, which is not today, or at least it's not today where I am. And we are not entirely sure when your email address will be whitelisted for this cloud trial without having to provide credit card details. It should be on the 11th of June, but we don't know if that means 11th of June in Japan, which it probably already is, or the 11th of June somewhere else. The only thing I can say here is that you probably have to keep trying. Make sure that you do not use a Gmail or Hotmail mail account because they typically are not accepted. So you should be using a company email address. If you haven't used that for your registration, you probably should create another registration, and Jürgen will make sure that it's processed. And also, you cannot use an email address that you have used before for an Oracle Cloud trial. Sorry about that, that's Oracle's rules. So let's assume that you have your tenancy, and if you don't have it right now, that you should be able to get it very quickly. I see raised hand. Philip, if you can ask your question in the Q&A panel, please, and Marcus as well. I will continue. So the steps that you will be taken through in the preparation scenario are the following. So you will start with your laptop and an Oracle Cloud trial tenancy. That's where you start. Then you will go to the scenario, the Katacoda scenario for preparing your cloud tenancy, and this Katacoda scenario will have the Oracle Cloud Interface command line interface. You will also open the OCI browser console, and within that, the Cloud Shell. Then you will follow instructions to generate a key pair and to upload a public key to your OCI tenancy, your trial tenancy, and you will fetch the details for the configuration file, the details about the key. So you will copy and paste the private key that was generated in Cloud Shell into this PEM file. And you will also copy configuration details to a file called config. It's all described in the scenario, but this is just an overview so you know what you will be doing. Basically, you are creating a PEM file and a config file, and you will also store the details for this PEM file and config file on your laptop because you will need it in all scenarios. So once you have configured both the PEM file and the config file, you can go to the next step in the preparation scenario, and it will create OCI resources and define policies. And again, it's all described in the scenario, but this is just an overview so you know what will be happening. And these are all the resources that get created in this preparation scenario. Here's an overview. So you will get a compartment called lab compartment. It will contain a virtual cloud network. It will contain subnet. It will contain an internet gateway. You will have a tag namespace. You will have an API gateway, which we won't be using today. You will have a stream, and you will have a dynamic group. This is all created by the preparation scenario, and it will lay the foundation for all the other hands-on scenarios. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to Rolando, who's going to talk about the real services and a real scenario, compute instances.
Okay, thank you, Lucas. Thank you very much for the introduction. And thank you, everyone who is here in the Zoom session. And yes, as Lucas mentioned, we have around 13 scenarios in Katacoda. And we have, like, some of them are like the basic ones in terms of the functionality and also in terms of the elements that conform the OCI infrastructure, right? So in our opinion, one of those core scenarios and one of those core functionalities about the OCI cloud is compute instances, all right? So actually, this is one of the scenarios that we're going to follow today, or that you can follow up after the session. And again, it is one of the basic ones. So I think we can move forward with the next slide. Okay. All right. And compute instances are one of the most relevant components and offering from Oracle. It is a wide range of infrastructure as a service options that you have. It goes from virtual machines, different shapes, different operative systems, different memory requirements and CPU and so on. You have also the ability to provision those VMs on top of bare metal servers as well. So you can provision a bare metal server and deploy VMs on top of that. You can create your own VM images as well. You can spin up compute instances from current boot volumes as well. So you have many options for that, and it is a good service for Oracle. It actually meets all the requirements, or probably most of the requirements that you have for your applications in terms of operative system and memory, CPU, and so on. So it is one of the core things that Oracle has within the OCI, right? So it is used for many other purposes. For example, when you provision an Oracle Kubernetes engine cluster, you are actually deploying or creating compute instances at the time, all right? So it is a very broad service that Oracle has within compute instances. So let's move to the next slide, please, Lucas. Okay. So in a nutshell, you have several alternatives for compute instances that pretty much you have a very simple way to provision those compute instances. One of those options, actually, it is the OCI CLI, which is the one that we are going to be using throughout the Katacoda scenarios. And as I mentioned, you have a lot of alternatives to provision those instances. For example, those alternatives are regarding if they are private, if they are public, the operative system, the image, etc. Right? You can, again, you can create your own images. You can scale out your instances, which is something that Lucas was already addressing in the introduction. This is a good functionality within OCI. You can scale out your instances if you have, I don't know, an application that you need to deploy in different compute instances, and you want to scale them because of the number of transactions you are receiving and the level of CPU or RAM that compute or set of compute instances are using, you can actually scale out, and it will auto-provision a new set of instances or a new instance, and actually it can scale in. If after any amount of time, then you are getting back to the average usage of your compute instances, you can actually scale in. So it is pretty good in my opinion. You have alternative for backing up those instances as well. And pretty much what we are going to do throughout the scenario is for you to get along with the CLI to understand how to provision a compute instance. And you will see that it will happen in maybe less than 3 minutes or so, which is pretty fast, I think. So I think we can move forward with the next slides. And the next slide is actually just simplifying whatever I just mentioned, that this is simple throughout the web console, throughout Cloud Shell, throughout the CLI. So it is a very simple thing to provision your compute instances. Obviously, you need to have a VCN already created, a subnet already created, and some decisions that you need to take before provision your compute instance, obviously. And actually, we are going to talk about them throughout the Caracoda scenario, okay? So you have, again, multiple alternatives that are going to fit your needs. All right, so the main purpose of this set of, or this series of webinars that we started today and that we are going to continue throughout the next weeks is about the usage of Caracoda as a, as a way or as a place to get along with OCI, okay? We want you to use OCI if you already have a tenant and you don't know these services. We want you to use them because we feel that it is a good option for you. If you are not so familiar with OCI, then this is a good moment to get familiar with it, and you will realize that within OCI you have good choices and you can actually use it, and it's pretty straightforward. So you may be asking why and what in terms of this scenario. I mean, why create a compute scenario and what it is within this compute scenario? Well, the answer about the why is because compute instances are a commonplace in OCI, all right? So you pretty much, if you are a user of OCI, you pretty much have compute instances already deployed. It is very usual to do it, okay? Secondly, we want to show you how to use the OCI CLI. We want you to get along with it because it is, again, it is very powerful, but at the same time, it's pretty easy. So sometimes you want to automate some tasks, and a way to do it is through the OCI CLI, okay? The third point, sorry, is you cannot just only provision the compute instance, but you can actually provision the compute instance and at the same time install products within those compute instances. So it is just not a matter of provision an instance and that's it. You provision the instance, but also you can deploy or you can install products on top of that instance at the same time. So you will see it. It's just one command line to do that, or to do that all that I mentioned, all right? And also it is a good scenario for mixing up things like subnets, VCNs, and so on. So that is why we chose these computers. And there is another reason why, but I'm not going to mention it now because we are going to talk about it in the next scenarios. But there is an additional reason why we use it, okay? Now, what are we going to provision? Pretty simple. It's going to be a VM standard 2 shape. You can get into the OCI documentation and see the different alternatives for shapes. We know within OCI, you have many alternatives. We are going to use the pretty standard one, which is VM standard 2 shape. And we are going to install Nginx on top of it. So by the time you run the CLI command to provision the compute instance, at the same time, within the very same command line, you will provision an Nginx server, all right? So that's the reason why, and that is exactly what we are going to learn executing this scenario, okay? So if we move forward to the next slide, you will see exactly what you are going to be doing in the Caracoda scenario. You're going to define the shape which we already have, VM standard 2 again. You will define the region where you are located because not all of us are within the same region, so you can choose in which region you would like to deploy this. You will use the VCN and the subnet that you will provision in the preparation lab. You will define if your compute instance is public or private. We are going to use public because we are going to deploy the Nginx and we want to test that Nginx at the same time. So this can be public or private. You can decide on that. Our take is to use public in order to check it, to review what you provision. And you are going to run the CLI. And after that, you will validate that whatever we decide to provision, it was actually provisioned, okay? all of our Katacoda scenarios are a way to learn about OCI. And we want you to learn through reading the scenario. So we want you to go through the scenario and learn performing the steps. A way to understand that and a way to learn that is to validate that whatever you are doing, it is actually being done. Because if you do something and you don't know how to validate it, in our opinion, you are not going to learn what you are doing. So all scenarios have that ability. You are going to validate whatever we are telling you to do. So that's a cool thing in our mind. Okay, so that's it for the compute instance. The last slide for compute instance is just an image of what you are going to get. This is what you are going to get. Okay, you are in the Katacoda environment, which is that image that we have at the left side of the window of the slide. You will connect to that Nginx that is deployed on top of the compute instance through internet. That is why you are going to be using an internet gateway for that. This is going to be within an availability domain, as Lucas has already explained, okay? This availability domain has its own VCN and a subnet where you are going to deploy the compute instance, okay? And we are going to modify the security list so you can access port 80, so you can open a browser and actually validate that the Nginx is up and running, okay? So that's it. That's what the compute instance is all about. Probably it is straightforward for you if you are already familiar with OCI and your life is about deploying compute instances. That's probably this is not quite interesting. But at the same time, if you are doing that and doing it through the web console, then this is a good opportunity to learn about the OCI CLI. In the other hand, if you are not familiar with this, then this is the right moment for you to understand how to use it, okay? So that's it, Lucas, for the compute instance. The second instance that we have for today is the events and notification service. First of all, these are two different services. They probably look like they are the same or within the same service, or they are packaged somehow in the same box. But the reality is that they are different services. They are two different services by Oracle, event services and notification services, okay? They are very powerful as well. I am not just exaggerating and telling you that this is very powerful and you can do very powerful things with this, but the reality is that you can do very cool things with these two services and you will learn how to do it. In my opinion, with my customers, I have not seen them using these two services and I think they are very useful. So if this is your situation, then this is a good time for you to understand how to use them, okay? All right, so let's move to the next slide, please, Lucas. And as I mentioned, events and notification services are two different services. Events are related to react to things that occur within your OCI infrastructure. For example, if your users are creating new buckets, if your users are spinning up compute instances or something that they are doing to create new resources and you want to get something out of it, I mean, if you want to get notified, for example, if you want to consolidate the log files for those actions, if you want to call a function after the resource was created, then cloud events are something for you because you can react generating rules that every time that you create a resource, you can get an action or you can take an action, okay? And then there is where the notification services come to the picture because the notification services are the ones who are responsible to notify, for example, through a topic, and then that topic users can subscribe to it, for example, through an email, and then you can get the notification after a resource was created. And actually, you will do it throughout the Katacoda scenario. You will create a bucket, and every time you create a bucket with a specific name, you will receive a notification through an email. I don't know if Lucas wants to say something about this.
No.
Or,
no? Doing fine.
All right, so this is events and notifications, all right? There are many options for this, and I think you will like those options because it is not just a matter to send an email and that's it. I want to be notified because my users are creating a bunch of buckets, which will be cool because probably they are spending more than what they have. But also you can trigger actions, which is good because those actions can be functions, and then within the function context, you can pretty much do whatever you want, reacting from an event, all right? So we have events, services, and we have the notification services, okay? If we move to the next slide, we will see that those two events and notification services are located within the same submenu. So if you click on the burger menu at the top left of the screen, and then you go down to the application integration submenu, then you will have those two options, the notifications and the event service, right? Those two services, I think they were released last year around July or August or so. And they've been constantly being upgraded in order to get integrated more and more within the OCI infrastructure, okay? Again, we are going to have a complete scenario about events and notifications, and you will learn how to use them and how to mix them out, because we are going to mix them with notifications through email, and we are also going to mix them with functions, okay? In the next slide, we explain a little bit more, or in a clearer fashion, how these two services look like and what are the boundaries for those two. So imagine that you create a bucket. You can assign a rule for that event about the bucket creation. Every time that rule matches, because maybe it is every time that you create a bucket with a specific name, then you want to trigger something, and then you create a rule for that. And that is going to publish a cloud event. And this is relevant because that cloud event is actually a standard cloud event, which is based on the CNCF events. Once you have the cloud event, you can incorporate it into a notification, and the cloud event is going to go through the entire flow. So that's what you want to receive, what you want to get, which is the cloud event. That is going to be put in a notification topic. And just as in any other topic, you will have subscribers for that topic, okay? And those subscribers can be different flavors. It can be an email notification, it can be a function, or it can be a streaming, for example, for logs, all right? So if you want to divide in your head what is the boundary for event services and notification services, then if we just click again, we will see how are those boundaries. So the first part was the event services, and the second part was the notification services, all right? So that's pretty much what the events and notification services are. And just to finalize this, as I already mentioned, the events are based on CNCF. So you will be getting CNCF-based events. And the scenario that you are going to follow is in the next slide. So the steps that you are going to follow are, again, why and what. Why? Because this is useful for operators. So if you are an operator, then you can use this type of services. You can mix these services with other OCI components, okay? This is relatively new, so if you are not aware of this, then you will learn it. And because this is a good practice for your OCI CLI skills. And the what, we are going to create a topic, then we are going to create a subscription, which is an email-based subscription. Then we are going to create a rule that works with the bucket create event. And then we are going to create an action to send notifications through that topic. So every time the bucket is created, we are going to send a notification, okay? That's what we are going to do. And there is still a 4th step that we may take, but we are not to cover it now because it is when we mix with Oracle functions. But this is something that we are going to address within the next scenarios because next week we are going to cover functions, okay? So at the end of the day, and I think I'm done with this within the next slide, this is what you will get. You will have a bucket, you have the cloud events, you will configure it, actually the cloud events, and then you will integrate them with notifications and functions and so on. So I think that's pretty much, Lucas, from my side in terms of the scenarios that are ready for the users. And sorry, I just forgot this. This is the steps that you're going to take. Create a topic subscription, create the rule based on the bucket creation. Then you will trigger and you will associate that action to trigger the notification, and you will receive an email into your mailbox. And in the mailbox, you will receive the cloud event. So you are actually going to see the shape of that cloud event. All right. So I think that's it, Lucas. I think we cover pretty much what we want to share with the audience today.
Thank you very much, Rolando. So from your living room in Mexico City back to my living room in Zoetermeer.
Correct.
It's a small place, this world, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're more or less at the end of what we wanted to tell you. We will stick around to support you through the Q&A window with any additional questions you may have and any things you run into in doing the labs. On this slide are the two most important URLs, one for getting the cloud trial and the other one for going to our Katacoda scenarios. And I think I will, for those of you that do not yet have this trial environment and are waiting to be whitelisted, which could happen any moment, for those of you, I will give a brief demonstration of the preparation scenario, so you have an easier time of it when you actually get around to it yourself. If at this point you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A panel, and I'm sure Rolando will try to answer them while I do a brief demonstration of this scenario.
Yeah, feel free to ask. If you are not familiar with the Katacoda itself, then it's okay. Just send us your questions and we will reply.
So Katacoda, as I said, it starts with an introduction, and in this introduction, we try to give a demonstration of what you are going to do in the scenario, and we hope you will take some time to read it, not only to know what you are supposed to do and what you will learn, but also because it gives us time to prepare the environment in the background. So I started this scenario some time ago, too long ago actually. So this environment was killed, and I have to start it over again. So when I now try to go to the scenario, you will see this preparation in progress. Here we are installing the Oracle OCI command line interface. It's done for you, so you don't have to do anything, but wait, basically. Meanwhile, you can write the description on the left side of how to get the trial for a cloud environment. And when you have your cloud trial, you can continue and start with the instructions. And in these first instructions, you are going to generate a key pair and get all the information you need for the OCI CLI configuration file, and you will do so in Cloud Shell. So following the instructions down here, we are to get the contents for these two files, for the config file and for the PEM file, and these files are currently empty. Over here, when I click on the copy to editor, I copy the content, this snippet, to the config file, but of course the information in there is not valid. So I need to get the proper information in Cloud Shell. So scroll down, and here you are instructed to open Cloud Shell. Well, you saw me open Cloud Shell before. I have to reconnect, and I have to so there we go. What's the first thing I need to do? I have to copy this snippet to the clipboard, and I have to paste it from the clipboard and execute it in Cloud Shell. So now in Cloud Shell, these bash commands are collecting information into environment variables. And I'm going to use this information later on to copy back to my config file. So using this statement, I get an overview, and I'm not sure I should be showing you this. No, there's no private key information yet, so that's okay. This is information that we will be pasting back to the config file, but not just yet. So this explains again what's going to happen, and here are some statements that I will use in Cloud Shell to generate the key pair. And this key pair goes, the public key goes into my OCI tenancy. The private key goes with me. That doesn't go into the cloud, it goes to my laptop, and I will be using this private key whenever I need to configure the OCI CLI to communicate with my cloud tenancy. So I paste the snippet, and here my keys are generated. And when I type ls, I can see there's a PEM file. Actually, it's in the subdirectory OCI keys. There I go, and now I get a listing, and these files were just generated, or not a fingerprint, obviously, but the PEM file for the private key and the public key. Meanwhile, back in the Katacoda scenario, my next instruction in Cloud Shell execute this command to get the contents for the config file. So there we go, copy to clipboard, execute the statement, and I need to select this output, copy, and now I can paste it into my config file, and I will save it over here. Well, actually, it's the same information that's already up here. I will be using the same information in all the scenarios, so please keep it somewhere safe. Then also I need to get the contents of the OCI API key file. That's the private key. The contents of this file should be copied to this PEM file. Now I already have my private key. And again, please save it somewhere on your laptop because you will be needing it. And now with these two files defined in my Katacoda environment, I should be able to connect to my tenancy. But of course, before I can do so, the OCI CLI needs to have been installed, and apparently it's not quite there yet. It's taking a little bit longer than it normally does, maybe because we are all doing it at more or less the same time. I'm going to execute this code snippet, and I'm going to execute it by simply clicking on it. So there's no copy and pasting of commands in Katacoda. You simply click on a command and it's executed in the terminal. But the terminal needs to be prepared, and it's currently not because it's still installing OCI CLI. Let's give it another 10, 20 seconds perhaps. I hope it's not longer than that. Ah, there we go. So now I can click on this statement and get it executed, and there is my namespace. It's not really relevant what is returned, but this is proof that I have a valid configuration, a valid connection between the Katacoda environment and my OCI tenancy. And this is what you need, not just in this scenario, but in all scenarios. So I can get a list of all the users in my tenancy. You will see only 1 or 2 users in a fresh tenancy. I see a few more because my tenancy is no longer fresh. And I execute this statement to set a number of environment variables in my Katacoda environment. It's the same as I did in Cloud Shell, but of course that was Cloud Shell, and now I'm in a different VM. And I can get my region. My tenancy happens to be in US Ashburn. Yours could be anywhere, and you will see, of course, a different value here. In order later on to be able to log into Docker, or actually the Cloud Container Registry using Docker, and that's what we need for the functions, the function scenarios, you need to execute this statement that will result in a generation of an authentication token. and the definition of a username. So please write down somewhere, copy paste to a file on your laptop, this username, well, not this one because this is mine, but yours, and this authorization token. And again, it's all defined, it's all specified in the scenario. So create local copies of the config file and the PEM file. These two files, make sure that you have local copies on your laptop for all the subsequent scenarios. So the next step is to create the resources that you will need for all the future scenarios. So all the basic foundational components that we need are created in this step. And you create them just from this environment, just from the Katacoda environment, using these scenarios, using these commands. I can't execute them because I can, but it won't work because this compartment already exists. Because I've gone through this scenario several times before. I can get the identifier for the compartment, and it is now set in my environment variable echo compartment ID, and it will give me this identifier, this Oracle Cloud identifier, which is explained in the first real scenario. This is the resource of my, the identifier of my cloud resource. Here you will create a tag namespace. Again, it won't work because it already exists, but this is how you do it. Just click on the snippet and it gets executed. To create the virtual cloud network, we ask you to go into the console. And if you click on this snippet, you will get the URL that you should open in the console. So I go to the browser and open this URL in the console, and I will go immediately to where I need to be. I need to be in the section networking, more specifically the section virtual cloud networks, and you will be using this wizard, the VCN wizard, to create your virtual cloud network. It's called VCN Lab, so again, it won't work for me because it already exists. The steps, as before, are described in the scenario. So here you will get detailed instructions about what to do in the wizard. It's actually very simple. You start a wizard, and in the wizard you have to specify the name of the VCN. You will tell it to call it VCN Lab, and it will be included in the lab compartment. This lab compartment is also created in the preparation scenario just before this step. Again, I can't run it because it already exists. Once you've gone through the wizard, you will also use this statement to create a security list and to add, I can execute this one. It will retrieve the identifier of the VCN and of the VCN's security list. And now when I look at my security list for the public subnet, you will see only 3 ingress rules because those are the default ones. The 4th one is added in the scenario. So now I'm going to remove it. So now there's only 3. And when you get in the scenario to this step, this statement is executed, and it will add the ingress rule. So now back in the console, and now I'm disappointed because I thought I would see the 4th ingress rule. What did I
take some seconds, Lucas?
Okay, it's still being created, hopefully.
Because it is there, right? That was the answer of the command, and it is a 443.
That's true. Yeah. Well, it will be here in a moment. Here's the statement to create an API gateway, which we will be using in our next webinar when we talk about functions and the API gateway. And here's the command to create a stream. And as as Rolando mentioned before, you can create all of these objects in the console, but it's a lot of work. The OCI CLI allows us to automate it and to show you indicator coder scenarios how to create all these objects. In our 5th webinar, we will be looking at Terraform as another option for provisioning objects and automating that provisioning process. So the final step in the preparation scenario, you are creating a number of policies, and these policies enable the function service and the API gateway service to perform certain operations in the lab compartment. You don't need to know the details at this point, but you do need to execute these steps. And again, I can try it, but it won't work because it already exists. Policy already exists. And finally, I complete the scenario, a brief overview of what I've done. I can share my success, you can share your success, and then you're up for the next scenario in the course. And the next scenario then would be an introduction to the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure core concepts. And in this scenario, again, the OCI CLI will be installed in the background. And you can go through all the steps. And I think only in step 6 do you actually, or step 7, 8, step 8, you actually need to configure the OCI CLI by pasting the values that you've saved on your laptop to these two files. It's a bit nervous, isn't it? So there you go. Well, hopefully this has been enough of an introduction for you to get started yourself. I really believe that if you have your cloud trial tenancy, then the scenarios are step by step enough to help you along. But if for some reason they are not, you can always ask us for help. We will be around for a little bit longer in this session. We won't be speaking, but we will be monitoring the Q&A tab. And do we have the Slack channel already set up, Rolando?
I think yes. Jürgen was going to share with us the link for the Slack channel. But if not, I can. If that is not the case, and I can create one now and share it to everybody. Because our idea is for you to follow up with this at any moment. It cannot be just now, maybe later today, tomorrow, and you may have a question or whatever, and we may create this Slack channel for receive your questions, and then we can continue support you. All right. I think Jürgen has already shared it in the chat. Let me. Yes, Jürgen has helped us, and he already put the URL to the Slack channel in the chat window of the session. So you just can subscribe to the channel, and we will support you. Okay?
Okay. Well, as I said, this means the end of the presentation. We will stick around, but you won't be hearing from us at this point. Thank you very much for joining us today, and hopefully you will join us again next week or watch one of the on-demand videos afterwards. Have a great rest of the day, if there's any day left to you. And thanks, Rolando. Thanks, Jürgen. Goodbye for now.
All right. No, thank you, Lucas. Thank you, Jürgen. So we will remain here for anyone who can do the scenario, and we can support you right away. I think we will be here for the next maybe 30 minutes, right, Lucas? Or so.
Something like that. My family is expecting me to cook for them, so I won't be able to stay alone for too long.
Okay, good.
I've prepared lasagna. It's almost done, but it still needs to go into the oven.
Okay.
By the way, if you have an opinion about today's session, we're also very interested, of course. So you can also use the Q&A channel or the Slack channel to give us some feedback and to maybe suggest topics or improvements. Feel free. We are here for you.
And remember that this is for you to get along with new services, get along with the CLI, or if you are completely new to OCI, then this is a good way to get introduced to it. So it's basically for different profiles, if you will. And every new scenario is going to give you more knowledge about the OCI itself. So we really encourage you to try to make them. And if you like to do this type of things, then you will have at the same time a good moment or a fun moment, because it is fun to follow the scenarios and see them working. I think it gives you some type of satisfaction when you get it done and you see that things are working. So that was our main purpose. Also, someone was asking about the PowerPoint slides. I think we can share them, and probably we will upload them into the GitHub repository so you can download them from there if you will. And also, if you want to learn how to write a Caracola scenario, then also the GitHub repository give you an example on how to do it. You can just follow what we just did, and it is pretty straightforward.
So I think we've come to a good point to stop the recording. So now you're free to speak freely.